The main thing tonight is beta testing night for the games. It'll sort of be the final chance for your group to get feedback, to actually see the game being played by people, and just kind of make sure that all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, and that you leave here tonight with a really clear plan in terms of what needs to be completed over the next 2 weeks. The final games are due in 2 weeks. From what I've seen from the groups, I don't think that's going to be an issue for any of the groups. Looks like everyone's in really good shape. So hopefully having these final 2 weeks will just really let you polish some things up and maybe just make some tweaks to rules or whatever it is that you find out from tonight. But before we get to that, I want to just quickly go over the final 4 weeks of the course, including tonight, in terms of what we're doing. Tonight, as I said, we're beta testing, getting the final plans in place for the game. Next week, week 13, we are going to be doing quick, meaning no longer than 5 or 6 minutes apiece, presentations about your gamification experience. 2 weeks ago, you were working on the design. Over the course of the past week, you should have been solidifying that design and getting a plan in place for actually doing your gamification. And I kind of go in and spot check every once in a while. It looks like a number of you have already done the actual gamification experience, which is great. But sometime over the course of the next week, if you have not, you should put that gamification actually into practice. And then next week, the main thing will be about just going around and having everybody talk a little bit about, what they gamified, how they gamified it, what the experience was like, are there any changes you would make, kind of recapping the main points off of the instructional design plan. And then hope.
I missed that. You said that was next Wednesday?
Next week, yes.
Do next Wednesday?
Yes.
Because I don't know, I'm off from school this week, and I'd like to put it into use next week.
Gotcha.
So,
That's why I set it up, and I did last week, but I almost wish I waited.
Is it something you think you could get in Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday?
yeah, I want to do it the whole week, but it's fine. I'll do it for a couple days.
Yeah, at least if you have some obviously, if you want to continue it through the whole week, then do so. But at least have it underway by Wednesday so that you can have some feedback in terms of how it's going and what you're doing and so on. So yeah, I guess I didn't really process that between schools being either on break last week, this week, or next week. It might be a bit tricky, but do what you can. So, but with 16 of us, even if each person only goes for 5 or 6 minutes, that's still going to eat up the better part of a couple of hours. So the presentations are not meant to be long and involved, but also mainly just so that everybody can leave with a bunch of ideas of types of things to gamify, things that you might be able to bring back to your own classroom or your own experiences and put into practice. So I do want to have a chance for everyone to share out their final experiences with that. So that's the main thing for next week. The following week, week 14, is when the games are actually due. And even though most of you at this point have had some experience with what the other groups are doing, we are going to do a formal presentation by each of the 4 groups that will have sort of 4 parts to it. So I figured with 4 people in each group, sort of each person could take one of the 4 parts. It's going to be about sort of the background of your game. What were you educationally trying to achieve with the game? What developmental stages you went through, sort of what was the experience of what did you start with your initial brainstorms, and then kind of where did you end up with the game and how did you get there? Describing the actual game in its completed form. So just kind of walking us through the way the game works, showing off the game board in pieces and the rules and so on. And then finally, just kind of a little bit of a reflective piece about the entire process. So I'm looking at probably 20 to 25 minutes total per group. So I figure that's 5 minutes per person per within each group, and that should get us to 20 or 25 minutes or so. So that'll kind of wrap up the game project at that point. One thing I'm struggling with, and maybe I'll just leave this out to you guys. When Dr. Sponder left me this class, one of the things he gave me was 2 big shopping bags full of previous games that previous groups had done, which was great, and I love being able to look through them. But I'm also looking, at least for some of the groups, at some of the work you've done, and I'm also feeling bad about like taking your projects away from you and not letting you keep them if you wish. So I'll leave it up to the groups. What I would say is, because I do want to get a chance to kind of look over the materials, if your group or a member of your group wants to keep the game, then I'll take them that week that's where they're presented, and then just make sure to return them the final week of class if you want to keep them. If you don't really care, then I'll hold on to them, because I think it is nice to see what they look like from year to year, and so on. So just something to think about. I see some of the hard work that's gone into this, and a piece of me is going, oh, and now I'm going to take it away from them, and they're never going to see them again. And so I'll leave that up to you. So that's week 14. Then week 15 is our final week. And that for this class, for the 530 class, is going to be 520 class is going to be relatively short. We've got the mandatory course evaluations that need to be completed. Somebody in the class is going to have to collect those, because I'm not allowed to touch them, and they get turned into the department office and stuff like that. So we've got that to do. I want to wrap up just some of the takeaways of the class and so on. For those of you who are in 530, you know that my plan is to kind of mash the two together on that Wednesday night, so that I'm not having people who are in both classes come Tuesday night and Wednesday night to do the wrap-up work. So I think there are 6 of you in this class that are not in the 530 class. So my guess is that probably you will come for that final Wednesday at 5, and you will probably be done by 6. You know, I don't think doing the wrap-up piece is going to take any longer than an hour. So if you're only in 520, I have to keep the numbers straight. If you're only in this class, 520, and not in 530, then your final class that week will probably only be 5 to 6 or so. If you are in the 530 class, then once I get the 520 business out of the way, we will finish up the last 2 presentations for 530 and do the wrap up for that class. And the plan is still to have everybody out of here no later than our normal 7:30 ending time. So nobody's going to need to stay later than they would or longer than they would. Some people will need to go, be able to go a little earlier. But that way I'm hopefully saving some people some travel time of having to come to campus 2 nights in a row, especially since the Tuesday night class is not used to coming to campus. So, so that'll be the final week. All right, so that makes sense to everyone?
Yeah.
All right, so, excuse me. I am, for those of you who didn't hear from last night, I am getting over some sort of cold, flu, who knows what, but something that laid me up, because it's spring break week, of course. That's the week that your body says, oh, you're not doing anything this week, why don't you get sick? So that's what happened, but I'm much better now. All right, so that's the timeline and due dates for the remainder of the course. Thing number 2 for tonight before we get to the beta testing, finally, and with my apologies, I've gotten your Powtoon feedback to you guys. Part of that is just my fault of being one of those things that I have on my plate and I'm thinking about it and then it slips my mind and then I find myself a week later going, oh, I can do it. And the other piece is partly because I inherited the class Moodle from Dr. Sponder, who had set up the gradebook in a particular way, and I hadn't really addressed that before I got things going in it. And so I wasn't able to do some of the things gradebook-wise inside of Moodle that I wanted to in terms of returning that assignment. What I finally just worked out, I thought as the best way is I downloaded all of your Word documents that you submitted to me, looked over the instructional designs. Those all had the rubric embedded in them. So right on the rubrics, what I did was highlight in yellow sort of the scales on the rubric. I put over in the left-hand column where it gave you the indicators, the sort of specific score, because each level of the rubric had kind of a range of scores. And then underneath the rubric, tried to give some quick feedback about things that I saw and calculate out the final score and so on. And then I turned just the first page of each of those documents into a PDF, and I believe have uploaded those back to you. So if you go into the class Moodle and go, I believe from your end you go into the gradebook or you go into the assignment. I'm actually not sure what you guys see at your end.
Honestly, I don't think I ever got a grade from Sponge to the end of the year, so you're already above.
Well, it should show. What I'm realizing now is I don't know what you guys. Is there a,
I saw it today. If you go to like grades where your name is.
it must be in a. Is that in the sidebar or?
Yeah, it shows up as an announcement in the sidebar.
Gotcha. Or up under your name in the top right. Is that?
No, it's on the sidebar right under administration where it says grades.
Oh, okay.
And under where you submit it.
Grade.
it says
Okay,
feedback.
so that'll give you the grade, and then I think if you click on it, there should be, yeah, there, okay. So, yeah, so if you go to the grades, it'll show you the overall grade, and then if you click on it'll take you to the original assignment, and if you scroll to the bottom, there's a feedback file, and that's the PDF that I uploaded back to you. So your original document will be there unchanged. I didn't want to go in and mess with anybody's original paperwork, but I downloaded my own copy, turned the first page into a PDF that had my comments and everything on it, and then returned just that page back to you so that you could see the specifics. All right? So does everybody find that? So yeah, so if you just click on if you click on that actually, and then scroll all the way to the bottom,
Okay.
that feedback file, that'll have the actual specific feedback. All right. Overall, I have to say, I was really pleased with what I saw. There wasn't a single case of a video where I was kind of left scratching my head going, I don't know that they really got it. So the work in general was strong, and in some cases very strong. So that overall, a lot of times when I return something like this, I have some general comments about maybe some areas of weakness. I don't really have anything that I saw across the board. There were maybe a couple of cases where the music that people used was maybe a bit too loud, and I know that's always it's a judgment thing, but just in general, especially when you are using music in a video, if anything, err on the side of making the music too quiet. Voices are just really easy to bury depending on the music in the background, because if the frequencies overlap, then the music will sort of mask the important frequencies in the voice. So I saw that in a couple of cases. Technically, there were very, very few, if any, like technical issues where I saw things where a transition seemed wrong, or some item seemed out of place, or an animation wasn't working the way it was supposed to. All of those sort of technical elements seemed pretty good. So yeah, I didn't really have a lot to say, generally speaking, beyond any specific comments that I may have given to individuals. Certainly, if you have any questions about my feedback, or want more feedback, or want more specifics, feel free to shoot me an email or something through Remind. But again, generally speaking, what I saw was quite enjoyable and effective, which is what the bottom line should be. So, anybody have any questions or comments, sort of generally speaking, about the Powtoon? I should have put this to bed weeks ago, I know, and I apologize. But but I made it there. I still have a few weeks before the end of the class. All right.
The vacation
So-
helps, right?
Yeah, I
Gotta
got
wait for
there.
that.
Okay, so yada 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 yada. Okay, so beta testing. Yeah, let's just get into this. So I've been trying to think what the best way is to do this. So what I think is going to work best is we've got 4 groups in here, and just in the interest of not having to do too many transitional moments, I think what we'll do is we're going to pair off the team. So 2 groups will work together for the rest of the evening. What we'll do is round 1 will be one of the teams playing the other team's game. And we'll go through a bit of a process and get that and the feedback and all that. And then we'll simply reverse roles and have Team B play Team A's game. What would be, I think, the most useful is if, as much as possible, you can simulate the way the game would actually be presented in a class. Meaning, if your game is targeted towards elementary school students, then somebody in the presenting group should present to the players sort of as much instruction and guidance as they would to a group of elementary school students. If your target is an older audience and the idea is more that you can kind of hand over the instructions and say, go for it, then try to sort of model that. So what I don't want to have happen is to have the presenting group kind of go through and explain everything about the game before the game's played. Try to present the game as if it was an actual classroom and do the things that you would do to get the game started in a class with a group of students who have not played it before. So the group that's playing the game, you might have to do a little acting a little bit and, you know, sort of assume the roles of the age group that would be playing the game. To a certain extent, you don't have to, you know, go crawling around on your knees or things like that. But so I just want the experience to be as authentic and as meaningful as possible, because one of the things that beta testing should tell you is whether the rules, as you've laid them out or printed them or however you present them, they should be able to get the players through the game. So I don't want you necessarily giving a lot of additional information, because then you may miss the fact that people actually playing the game wouldn't know to do X, Y, or Z. So when you start, I would say tell the group that's playing the game sort of who you're targeting so that they understand that much. And then, again, just simulate what you would actually do to get the game underway. Give instruction, divide up teams, assign roles, whatever it is. Play the game. Take your time. The different games are probably going to take different amounts of time to play. So if it's a really quick game, then maybe play several rounds of it. Switch roles. If you need more than 4 people to play your game, which I know we've got at least one group that needs a larger group, people in the presenting group may need to also be players to kind of help fill that out. If you only need 1 or 2 people to play the game and you've got 4, then, like I said, maybe play a couple of rounds and let different pairs of people play just to get a couple of different experiences with the game playing. So time-wise, I don't know, like total of 30 minutes maybe per full round. So meaning group A is presenting, they explain set the scene for the game, give out the rules for the game, team B plays the game. Then you have 5 minutes or so after the game is played to get feedback from the players about if there was anything they were confused about or anything like that. So all of that taken together takes about a half an hour. At that point, actually, we'd probably take a quick break, and then we'll come back and flip roles and spend the next half hour with the other groups reversing roles and doing it the other way around. Am I explaining it well enough? Okay, I can't tell in my own head if this is making any sense or not. So, yeah, but again, the bottom line is try to make the playing of the game as authentic as you can. So anything that the presenting or the playing groups can do to help achieve that is just going to help the presenting group get more useful feedback out of the game. Okay. Try not to assist the players in ways that you wouldn't normally assist the players if they really get stuck.
Play at all.
Well, you guys will have to in your particular case. So
But we
you'll
don't
have
have
a
to
bit of a
say,
bonus,
we don't
but-
have to tell anybody else what to do.
yeah, but that would also be a good point to find out if you're watching the players play and they get confused or they're not sure what to do next. Make note of that because that's important information. If you then need to step in and say, well, what we should have done here is this, just to get the game going again, then you can do that. But try not to manage the game in ways that you wouldn't actually manage the game if it was being played by real students. All right, so I guess authenticity is the key. Okay, so doesn't really matter to me which two groups pair up with which other two groups. Let's see, we're still missing. We're missing two, right? We're missing Earl and Milka. Are they both in the same team? I hope not. Okay, so we're just down one on two teams. So maybe just in the interest of spreading out that maybe as long as the team that Earl's in and the team that Yumilka's in aren't together, so we have both teams that are missing people working together. So one of the four people groups get together with one of the threes, and then the other 4-person get together with the other 3-person. If we've got enough room in here to do what you need to do, then that's fine. If you think you need to spill out into the hall to have a little more room, I know that it is a bit tight in here, but hopefully we can make it work. All right, so it is 5:36, so let's aim for somewhat after 6 o'clock to have the first round completed. And if it looks like both groups of groups are completely done well before that, then we'll move on more quickly. But take your time. If playing a couple of rounds of the game is useful, maybe you make a rule adjustment and say, well, can we replay the game with this rule adjustment and see if it helps? That you by all means do that. So use the half hour to get the most information that your group can out of the playing of the game. All right?
Yeah.
So ready, set, go.
Our game is super fun, so you're having super fun time, and you'll want to join us.
Yeah, this is one of the 4
We're
groups.
not missing
We're
any
full
part,
group.
so then we need to be with you guys. And you'll be happy you did so.
Can't wait.
Would you like to start?
All right, so we kind of have the front half of the room versus the back half of the
We're
room.
going
We could use.
So yeah, if you want to,
Yeah.
if this is useful or anything like that.
Okay.
I think we're good because we have one of the 3-player groups up here. All right, I'm actually
You
gonna.
want us to go first? Like a board game or?
Oh, you want us to go first?
Yeah.
That's fine. We can.
We're here.
Yeah, so again, the first
Ours is
half
kinda like a
hour,
candy
one
land.
group
Oh,
should
sorry.
be playing and
Anything.
the other should be presenting. Don't flip until we get to.
Is this for
after the break.
elementary, middle?
This is for first grade.
Aw, how fun!
So
I love the colors.
we
The
would
artist.
give, we could give written directions, but I know my kiddos wouldn't be able, most of them wouldn't be able to read it. And
So
if
you
I
have
gave them
to
directions,
explain,
they'd be like, I don't wanna play this.
Okay.
So you guys feel free to jump in. So a lot of times when you get a word problem, you have a hard time deciding whether you're adding or subtracting or you're doing a comparing problem. So I don't want you to solve anything. I just want you to decide whether you're adding, subtracting, or you're comparing. Okay? So when you get your card, that was a surprise. So when you get your card, there'll be a word problem on it.
Sorry, we're invading your space here.
And there's a little color at